Meeting for January 15th to order. We'll stand for a moment of silent reflection and the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Buskerud.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item is the review and approval of the agenda. Does anyone wish to make any adjustments to the agenda?
May I?
Yes, you may.
Number one, I would like to have off the consent calendar the number 7. There seems to be a discrepancy in whether that property is already in Sheridan Lake Highlands Road District. So we want to review those legals to see where we're taxing it, to see where the legals are, plus there's an annexation to that. And Mr. Kelly isn't here today to respond to that, so we need 2 weeks' time. And I'd also like to cancel 12C.
Anything further?
So 7 would be continued, or? Okay.
Any other comments about the agenda? Not, the chair would entertain a motion.
Make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the agenda with those revisions.
Would you specify those, please?
Item 7, and we probably have to make a vote on that later, and item 12C, removed.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Motion and a second to revise the agenda as stated. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. We now address the consent agenda. Holly, please.
Good morning, Commissioners. Holly Hennies, Commission Office Manager. For full public notice, the Board of Commissioners uses a consent agenda to act on non-controversial and routine items quickly. The consent agenda is acted upon by one motion and vote of the board. Items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda at the request of a board member or a citizen. Today, I've placed the following items for your consideration. To approve the minutes of the regular meeting from January 3rd, 2012, approval of the vouchers in the amount of $1,919,797.53, approval of the permit to occupy the right-of-way from Black Hills Multisports, Inc. as submitted from the Highway Department, approval of the 2013 Employee Assistance Program Agreement with Behavior Management Systems as submitted from the HR Office, and finally, to schedule a public hearing on February 5th, 2013 for General Fund Supplement SP 13-002 for the Modernization and Preservation Fund from Register of Deeds Equipment Budget.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion about the consent agenda? If not, the chair would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to remove item number 10.
Item number 10 is removed from the consent agenda. Any others? Chair would entertain a motion.
I move to approve the agenda with the removal of item number 10.
Is there a second?
Yes, second.
Motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with item number 10 removed. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as recommended by the auditor, I'd make a motion to postpone item 7 off the consent agenda to the next county commission meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
And now we address item 10.
Could I have a vote?
Commissioner Holloway, you asked that to be removed.
Item number 10?
Yes.
Okay. Did we want to vote on that last motion?
Okay, excuse me. We'll vote on the motion relative to item 7. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now,
Item number 10, all right, thank you. Donna, could you just give us a little history on this? I was just confused when I read it.
Oh, okay.
It's easier all the time to confuse me.
Sorry. This is the Modernization Preservation Fund that was established on July 1st of 2012 for my office. And we did not set up a budget for it for 2013. So that is what I'm doing now, so that I don't...
The money, the revenues, then the 64,000, where's that coming from?
That is being collected on a monthly basis. Right now, it has about $11,000 in it that was carried over from 2011. And there will be about another 54,000 that will be accumulated for the year of 2013.
Okay, and since this was new, you just didn't get it in the budget when you were in the budgeting process?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I'd make a motion to approve to schedule a hearing at 9:15 on February, I guess it would be to approve the supplement to the 2013 Modernization and Preservation Fund.
No, you were right. To schedule.
Well, it's pretty hard to, oh, I see. I'm sorry, then. It's to schedule a hearing on February 5th to supplement the 2013 Modernization and Preservation Fund equipment budget in the amount of $48,000.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Anyone wish clarification of the motion? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Item 11, a request for the exception of the 2012 assessment freeze for elderly and disabled.
Hi, I'm Ann Van Loan. I'm the Director and CEO of Western Resources for Disabled Independents. And I would like to introduce first, this is Verna Pope. Do you want to stand up? Good. Okay. You can say hello.
Good morning.
Okay.
Morning.
All right. And this is Patty Mudge. Patty is Verna's daughter. So I'm going to start out by just explaining a little bit about Verna. Verna is 83 years old. She was diagnosed by Dr. Zilke with dementia. And I think you have a lot of those documents in front of you. Verna received a notice from the Treasurer's Office on April 16th of last year. And when she read the correspondence, she did not understand what the Homestead Exemption Act was. And you know what? I looked at it too, because I don't think we called it that years ago. I think it was property tax relief application. So, of course, she ripped it in half and put it aside. So, Patty then found the correspondence, and I'm going to let you kind of fill in what you did then.
Well, first of all, I came down to do some property tax work of my own, and I at that time asked about my mom's taxes on her house, and they said they hadn't been paid. And this was towards the end of June, I believe. Anyway, I found out her taxes hadn't been paid, so I went home and I said, Mom, they say your taxes haven't been paid. Well, she had 2 checks that were made to Pennington County, one for property that she has on South 79 in joint partnership with another man, and another check. Well, she evidently wrote 2 checks for the taxes on that property and didn't write any of her own on her own personal home. So I got a check and came back, and then I was told she hadn't put through the paperwork for her property tax freeze. So I got the paperwork, and the lady encouraged me to get it filled out and hand it in, and that was rejected because it was too late. So I began the process, and honest to goodness, Janet Saylor couldn't have been more helpful. She was wonderful.
Okay, all right.
I can't do any more.
All right, thank
Sorry.
you. Thank you. Well, Janet suggested that they come to me, and I then tried to take over. So one of the things that I need you to know is that the taxes have been paid for 2011. And the taxes due for 2012 is $2,636. Now, Verna receives roughly $992 a month from SSI, and this just has not been enough to pay for her expenses. Her family has been helping out with expenses of food and different things. You know what? We don't have enough. We have 3.
Yeah.
Do you want to just hand that, and they can just kind of look that over real quick? Her telephone bill is $57.62. $50 she pays for her prescriptions. $78 for Black Hills Power and Light. $211.80 for Part D health insurance. $82 home insurance for Hartford Insurance Company. $30 Rapid City Utility, and that's the usual utility bills. She does get energy assistance. So the most she pays for energy assistance from MDU is $15. So that's all we put down there for that. $65.87 is her current house taxes per month, and $20 a month is a church offering. So as you can see, she just does not have the money to pay taxes. At this time, I just need some feedback from you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question for the auditor, or for the treasurer. Legally, can we make the adjustment on this at this point in time?
Yes, only the commissioners can. The legislator changed the law here 2 or 3 years ago that said if someone missed the deadline, that they could come before the county commissioners in January of the next year, and the commissioners could vote on each person separately on whether or not to give them this freeze or not.
Okay.
The only thing can say to you is we send out applications every year. In December, we did that last year. We contact the people by phone. I just don't know what else we can do in order to get these people to send in the applications. She did get a homestead also application along with the tax freeze, just so you know, because she'd applied for the homestead also before. And that deadline is May 1st, and the senior citizens is April 1st. But according to the law, the commission has to say on this.
What's the difference between the homestead exemption and?
Homestead is if she doesn't pay her taxes, she can get a reduced rate on interest.
I see.
we have before us a notice of taxes, I suppose, about, let's say, 780, something like that. And Ann said it was 26. Is that the difference between, with the, her taxes would be 2,600 without the,
She currently pays about $800 a year. It's just a little bit under that. But with the new assessment on our house, it would be over $2,600.
so if we grant this, it'll go back to 800.
Ron, as of November 24th, the taxes that were delinquent were $391.72 just for the tax amount. But for 2012 paying 2013, her total taxes are $26.36. So it is a
It couldn't be any more helpful. I'm going to make a motion to grant the what am I talking about? Yeah.
Second.
Motion and a second to grant the exception for the assessment freeze. Any further discussion? Any comments from anyone?
Do you understand?
I thank you.
All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next is item 12, and we are on time, so Auditor Julie Pearson.
We have before you this is the public time and place for the public hearing to approve a supplement to the 2013 general fund John T. Vakurovich budget in the amount of $30,000 from non-budget revenue received in the current year. The information from Director Karen Romey is attached. We should ask for if there's any public input. It has been posted. Karen's outside if you have any more specific questions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the supplement as presented by the auditor.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any comments from the public? From the commission? Not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Next item, item B.
This is a public hearing that has been advertised for a new license for the Fireside, which is owner's name Ashley Ginsberg. This is a retail on-off sale wine license, and advertising fee has been paid.
Any discussion on item 12B?
I'd make a motion to approve the liquor license.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the on-off sale wine license application. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 13, items from extension.
We are at the time of the year where we need to sign the MOUs with SDSU for both the 4-H program and the FNAP program. I received the document all together, so I went and separated it back out like the board had made the decision to do for 2012. So you have the two agreements in front of you and request a motion to approve.
As a point of clarification, these appeared to me to be the same as the current, in effect,
Yes, sir, they are.
memorandum and MOU. Did anyone have anything they wish to discuss in either document?
One thing I just wanted to make sure of, Mr. Chair, in the one-page MOU, what is the percentage that the nutrition program pays? Is that indicated anywhere here?
2/3 and 1/3 is what I believe you're asking about the
Yes,
utilities.
And I didn't really see that designated anywhere. Have we put it in there? I thought we had tried to put that in there before.
It's in the second document with F and up. It's under section 4 with what their responsibilities are.
Okay, because my concern was, I mean, it just seemed like we're talking about, in the first document, personnel and financial responsibility of the cooperating county. We don't have any indication that we are not responsible for the whole cost. And I'm just, you know, I recognize it's in here, but it's not in here.
You're absolutely right. I did not get that added into our 2/3 expense into the SDSU 4-H MOU.
I don't know if that is a critical thing, but you're going to be operating under two documents that conflict with each other.
No, that's a minor change. I can certainly do that.
And I'm good with that. I just, given our concerns in the past, I just want to make sure that's clear.
Any further discussion? I think we should deal with each document separately with separate motions.
You could, I'm sorry, again, so you can change that, Holly?
Yes, that's.
Okay, so if I make a motion to approve it with that change, it will be okay.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Mr. Chair, I would make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding between SDSU Extension and Counties of South Dakota 2013 with the addition of the 2/3 split of funding as per the other agreement. I'm not sure how to say that.
No, it's for technology charges, telephone technology.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, and we understand the changes that will be introduced into it in final form. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Second document.
I move to approve the 2013 Memorandum of Understanding between Pennington County and SDSU Extension Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion on that one, that memorandum? Any comments from the audience? If not, those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Next item is the appointment of 2013 Extension Advisory Board members.
Yes, we went out for advertisements in the month of December into the beginning of January. We have some turnover on our board. We currently have 6 positions open. We received 5 applications prior to the deadline. However, we did receive 2 more additional after our deadline on Monday. So I provided you with a little worksheet with everybody's names if you wish to use that to vote. So right now you're looking at 6 or 7 applications for 6 positions.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Holly, what does that do to us when we have 2 persons that are on this voting sheet that you handled that applied after the deadline? What's that do to us?
My personal opinion is nothing. All we would do is go back out and re-advertise for another month and put us another 2 months behind for getting the 2013 board appointed. So, deadline was Monday at 4 o'clock, I believe, and I had them on Tuesday morning.
Jay?
Say something to complicate it. Not necessarily a legal statement, but kind of ordinary statement you might expect from me, and that would be, if you have a deadline and somebody comes in after the deadline, then those who might have wanted to do that but saw there was a deadline and didn't do it, then they could obviously be upset that why did you let them? I was there with my application, saw that I missed the deadline, I walked away. So you mean I could have laid it down? That's what you run into. So I'd say you either don't utilize those two applications, or you open it back up and maybe open it up for a much shorter period than a month or 2 months. I don't know what our human resources director might say, a couple weeks, I don't know, and allow everybody, those two obviously, to apply again and get it in on time this time. And then anyone else that might have fallen into that category that I alleged could possibly have been there. I don't know how else to say it, but that's what you run into.
You said the deadline was on Tuesday, or Monday at 5 o'clock, and these come in the mail Tuesday?
The one, Tiffany, I'm sorry, when did Jonathan get his in? I don't remember the exact deadline. The lady, Laura Lawrence brought hers in person on Tuesday, and Jonathan's was by email.
Jonathan emailed his Tuesday morning, 8 o'clock, but he made the mistake of messing up on Holly's email. That's why she didn't receive it, and I thought she had it. So when I came up on the department head meeting, we found out that he didn't get it in, but he did had it. He had it to us at 8 o'clock in the morning, and he tried emailing it to her, but he had her email wrong.
So the fair thing is to appoint the 5 that we have, and we can deal with the other 2 at the next meeting or after another extension.
But even the Tuesday was past the deadline.
Yes, yeah, the last 2 were passed.
So you've got 6 positions, and we had 5 applications that were on time.
Yep.
So we really can only deal with those 5 people, and we still will have a position that's open.
Correct. That I can go back out and re-advertise for.
On a shortened period.
Yep, and the board will still function. There's a quorum for that board.
All right. So do we want to vote on the form that Holly gave us, or how to?
I don't think you need to at this point.
we
The
have
motion.
5.
Yep, the motion is on the memorandum.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd move to appoint Mary Williams, Richard Bray, Patty Bruner, Angela Lytle, and Kathy Anderson to the 2013 Pennington County Extension Advisory Board, and further move to continue to advertise for the remaining position with applications due February 5th.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Do you want to hear it at that meeting, or that's when you want them due and we'll appoint on February 15th?
I'll second it.
I'm meaning to, if I didn't say it right, what I'm meaning is that we would vote and fill the place on February 5th.
Okay, got it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Since the 2 that were late were both from the military, do we need a military person on that board? Or is that customary that we appoint someone, or it just happened that way?
There is not a specification in the statute that it has to be a military personnel, no.
There's not.
No, the reason why it went out to the military is because when I had the commander Fry on it, he put it out to the base wide to see if anybody would like to be interested in. Plus, we do have military 4-H up there, so it's kind of nice to have a liaison from there too. But either way, it's whatever your guys' decision is.
And Holly, you notified these 2 people that there's going to be another opening.
Yes, sir. Yep. Ask them to resubmit.
Well, I agree, but I'm not sure it's worthwhile to spend money to re-advertise it.
Well, we got one more opening we didn't have applications for. We got to do something.
Is there any provision at all for a seated board to fill a vacancy?
Not that I'm aware of in statute, no.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Next item 14.
Good morning.
Morning, Heine.
Morning.
The first item I have is amended resolution for deletions and additions to the county highway system that was passed in November last year. This has to be approved by the Transportation Commission, and I sent it in to Larry Dean, which is a data manager for the DOT, and through conversations with him, he wanted us to clarify the description of Chapel Lane, Highway 1416, Howard Street, and Northbury Pine Road to fully clarify what portions we wanted to remove. And then we visited about 173rd Avenue, which was on the county primary system, and it goes from Wicksville into Meade County, and he felt that should stay on the county primary highway system, along with a portion of 186th Avenue that also accesses Meade County. And then 222nd Street was just 1 mile of road that we felt should, after discussion with him, should stay a county secondary highway. So I've talked to Jay Alderman, and he said the best way to do this would to amend the existing resolution. That way there's a good paper trail in the minutes. And so they would see the first resolution in November, follow through the minutes that it was amended at this meeting. And then this one will be forwarded to the DOT for action by the Transportation Commission. And then I prepared a second resolution for your approval, which when we started putting our map together to have an official map to present to the public, we discovered that a portion of 158th, Anderson Road, Antelope Creek Road, and Schroeder Road was not shown on the map as a secondary road, and the second resolution would add them to our county secondary highway system. So I'll answer any questions, but I'm asking for approval of the amended resolution 2012-1016 and new resolution 2013-0515. And hopefully I will be done with all the revisions to the highway system. When you deal with 850 some miles of road, I'm so tired of looking at our map and changing and tweaking, and I'm hoping this is the final time I will have to appear in front of you on these issues, unless you decide to add more roads.
Well, the fact that you're helping the state get itself up to date from 1939
yes.
till now, you've done quite a job.
Mr. Chair, I'd move to approve amended resolution 2012-10-16. You want
Yes.
separate resolutions?
Yes.
I'll second.
Motion and a second to approve amended resolution 2012-1016. Any further discussion? Not those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd make a motion to approve resolution 2013-01-15.
There's a second.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve resolution 2013-01-15. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next item I have is bid authorization to bid for our annual supplies and some projects for this year. One is going to be an overlay on Silver Mountain Road, approximately 2 miles. It's going to estimated cost of $242,000. We intend to overlay approximately 4 miles of different roads throughout Rapid Valley. Estimated cost of $400,000. We're going to put an asphalt surface treatment on 28 miles of road throughout the county. Estimated cost of $600,000. We're going to put up a 40,000 ton aggregate stockpile northwest of Wall. Estimated cost of $170,000. And we're going to crack seal a bunch of our asphalt roads at an estimated cost of $85,000. That's the major projects. And then, of course, all my items that I may or may not need to buy throughout the year as far as aggregate materials, asphalt maintenance materials, metal pipe, concrete pipe, fencing, guardrail, chloride, seeding, fertilizing. It's just miscellaneous items that we use during the year that we put in an annual bid so that then we can go to those successful bidders and purchase those items throughout the year. So I'm looking for authorization to advertise for bids for those items.
I move to approve the authorization of the Highway Department to advertise for the bids for the items as listed.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Next item I have is a road safety audit. Last year we had members of DOT, Pennington County, the Highway Patrol, we had a list of people, but there was on Nemo Road and Norris Peak Road, there was 3 recorded accidents or more on those roads during the last 3 years. In the Safety Lieu Highway bill, there was safety funds set aside to address certain areas that had a higher accidents than normal roads. The team looked at these areas and felt there was improvements that could be made by additional signing, improve the guardrail, etc. And this is a 90-10 program. We get 90% federal safety funds that are passed to the state, and then the county has to match it by 10%. Federal Highway was involved, and they've approved additional signing, guardrail, and possibly putting some little plaques on some of our curve signs, or getting some information sent to the people that do the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally, designating this road as a be aware there's some bad curves, and just make them aware that this is a difficult road to ride with motorcycles. In order to continue with the project, the federal rules and regulations have changed on how we proceed with the project. We have to select a consultant firm that's been approved by the state of South Dakota. You have to select a firm before you can negotiate or even ask what it's going to cost. That's a new rule from the federal government. It's a professional contract, and you do not talk about fees or cost until you actually select somebody. The state has an approved list of firms in this area, which is on the second sheet of my memo to you. And what we have to do is select one of those firms. The state will negotiate with that firm to see if their fee is agreeable to the DOT, and then they'll forward to us for our approval just for the consultant. Once we get a consultant in place, then we'll move forward with designing a project. So
what happens if the state doesn't approve the company we choose?
The state will go to that firm and negotiate with them, and if they feel the fees are too high or it's not in line with other projects, they may come back and say, we can't get a deal with this company.
So basic.
If we don't select a firm from the retainer list, we can go out for an RFP, do one on our own. We can advertise for an RFP. We can select the top 3 or 4 firms and rate them according to projects they've done. We cannot ask anything about fees until we select one, and then once we select one, then we can sit down at the table and negotiate a cost. So These have all been pre-approved by the state, so they will be approved by federal highways. So it's kind of I know, it's a difficult process to go through, and it's much easier to select one, whoever you feel. In my memo, we've worked with C-Tech Engineering, Ferber, Canris, Lee and Jackson, TSP. They've all done bridge projects or construction projects in the past. We've got along good with all those firms, so I'm not opposed to if you select one of those, or if you have a favorite one off the list, I'll work with whatever the board desires.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
what's your recommendation?
I don't want to be
I don't either.
looked at as playing favorites or whatever,
I
but
don't either. You're the guy that works with them.
I don't know.
What happens if we don't pick any?
You can get the roads fixed.
If we don't pick one?
Well, then we cannot proceed with the project until we pick a firm. The commissioners the county has to select a consultant to
Highway department, highway superintendent does.
In terms of proceeding with the project, do you think the project is something we should proceed with?
Oh, yes. I mean, if we can improve the safety of the roads and reduce accidents on our highway system, I'm all in favor of it. There is some safety improvements that can be done. I guess if I look back through my records and look at the firms we've used the most, the one that we haven't used for quite a while is Camrus, Lee and Jackson, and TSP. So I guess if you were going to put me on the spot, I'd look at our contracts that we've done. Those two firms haven't had a contract for quite a few years. So
Hate to put you back on the spot, but what's the reason for that? That we haven't used them?
Well,
are we too high priced, or they just haven't been there?
I would go that way. Yes,
Okay.
we've had some proposals and they were not selected based on their proposals. I have a favorite firm, but I don't want to
Mr. Chair,
pay politics or anything.
I'm going to make a motion that we choose C-Tech Engineering Services.
Is there a second? Motion died for lack of a second.
I will justify that. We have done quite a bit of work with them out in the valley, and I think they've been a good firm to work with.
You're discussing a motion that died for lack of a second.
I'm just telling you my reason I chose them.
I would side with Nancy if you wanted my opinions. There we go.
That helps.
Yes.
I will, since Nancy can't make that motion again, I will. I wanted to hear the explanation before I seconded it, but we got too quick, so.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Oh, can I second it? All right, I'll second it. I thought maybe I was.
We have a motion and a second to select.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman. Are they the ones doing our project, our Spring Creek project currently?
No.
They're doing our Reservoir Road project, and they've done the Reservoir Road project south of Twilight also, and they're doing our Deerfield Road overlay project, and I will probably be coming within the next 60 days to try and get approval to retain them to do the inspection and management of the Reservoir Road when we're ready to let it for bids. Because we got two big projects this year. We got Plateau Lane. My staff and engineers are gonna be tied up with Plateau Lane, and we're gonna be doing Reservoir Road this year also, so there's no way I'll be able to do the construction management on both of them, so.
So you're gonna have C-Tech do it?
I'm going to ask approval to retain them, yes, in the near future, so.
Any further discussion? Do we want a roll call vote?
Sure. I want to be first. No.
Davis,
Yes.
Holloway,
Yes.
Troutman,
Yes.
Peterson,
Yes.
4-1.
Imagine that.
Thank you, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Next item, item 15, weed and pest. Scott.
Good morning. Just want to give you an update on how we're proceeding with our pine beetle suppression project. We got 6 seasonal employees on our survey crew, and then we've entered into contracts with 18 individual tree cutters. And to date, we've identified a little over 23,000 trees within our 300-foot buffers adjacent to private land. And that's roughly on 3,300 acres. And to date, the cutters have cut a little over 11,000 of those trees. And then on our right-of-ways that we've identified, 34 miles of emergency escape routes that we felt were vital to keep those areas clean in case of emergency evacuation. We identified 3,800 pine beetle trees and 3,500 dead or hazard trees that have the potential of falling. On the budget, we spent $189,000 so far on cutting those 11,000 and the surveying and the supplies is the paint to paint the trees. Pending projects or projects that are assigned that that the cutters are out currently working on. Basically, we're at about $56,000 in for January wages on the survey crew, and then supplies as well. So that leaves us with about $90,000 left, and in what we had for funding. And if you look on project areas pending and the right-of-ways, you can see we're going to be over budget on what we've had identified for the trees we've identified. But if you look at the budget there, the highlighted yellow ones, if we do those, if we go ahead and cut those, that amounts to about $67,000. That'd leave us about $23,000 left, and we could carry that into our cost sharing of the tree spraying that we did similar to what we did last spring. So that'd leave out that Poverty Gulch, Myersville, and Horton Hicks. That's that Rochford area, east of or southwest of Rochford. If you look on that buffer map, it's those green areas, the 1687, the 2055, and the 399. That area is really hammered. If you go through and do an average on bug trees to the acre, on average we've been finding about 15 to 20. You get in that Rochford area, right in that particular area, you're up to about 40 trees to the acre. So it just gives you an idea how heavily infested that area is. It'd almost be better to spray the trees in that area. It'd be almost cheaper than trying to do a buffer there to try to save those. But and then the Nyman Timber Company donation, the $50,000. They asked us to go into that Buck Mountain timber sale, which they'll be going into next year. It's just northwest of Johnson Siding there. And the survey crew's been in there for about a week and a half, and so far it hasn't been too bad. We've identified maybe a couple hundred trees, and then I just talked to them yesterday, and they hit a big pocket of over 100 trees, and they're working in that area. So they'll be going in there and doing a thinning project next year. So we're kind of just doing a pre-sanitation, so it doesn't spread as much until they can get in there and thin it. And then that's going to be good protection for that Johnson Siding area and even east of there as well. So, and then the right-of-way on that map, you can kind of see where the roads were and where it was broke out on where the trees were. I'll pass around a picture here. This is the Silver City Road. That top picture has on the left side there of the road, there's probably 40 infested green hit trees that'll be dead reds next year. That'll be hazard trees to fall across the road. Then that bottom picture, you can see the trees overhanging there. Those are green hit bug trees that once they brown out, they're for surely gonna fall across the road. And then if you look farther down the road, you can see some red dead ones on down along the road there, so. Like I said, if we just identify on the right of way, go after the dead trees, the hazard trees that are gonna be most at risk of falling across in the near future, and then we could wait till next year maybe and address those other ones. But that's kind of an update where we're at.
Scott, do you want to mention how you decided which sections of right-of-way to actually?
Yeah, within the working group, working with Denny and Dustin and the sheriff's office, we kind of identified which areas are the ingress and egress emergency escape routes that are, you know, there is no other way to get out of there if there would be a fire or something like that come through. So that's why we kind of picked those areas and high travel risk in residents in those areas. So.
And another thing, Scott, is that even with those designated, I think there were 5 roadways that we picked, you still had to limit. And I think it's interesting how you chose to limit it, because it actually is pretty apparent on this picture, and maybe explain.
Yeah, when the guys started surveying that, you know, I was kind of surprised how many tree hits they were coming up with, and I told them, when you're out there, use your head. If it's down below the road, going downhill slope, and the odds are the tree's not going to fall across the right of way, don't mark those ones. Mark the ones that are going to be, that you figure is going to be the most at risk of, if it does blow over, that's going to fall across the right of way. So we did leave some trees out there that we didn't mark, just for that fact. Tried to do a little money savings there.
Which I think is kind of important for the commission to understand. And certainly Heine was at our last Mountain Pine Beetle meeting, and you know, he kind of went back and did some figuring, and it's pretty amazing how much money he has spent with trees falling over the road. It definitely is going to make a difference for us in other ways, to not only the safety of the people, but at an expense to the county. And we actually could do much more, but we are limiting it because of funds.
And I should point out, on the dead red trees, the green ones were bucking into 2-foot chunks to try to dry it out to kill the pine beetles. But on the dead red ones, the beetles are already out of the trees. So talking to Forest Service, they're going to let us buck them into 8-foot lengths. So that'll take less time for the cutters, and we'll pay half the price. Because I talked to them, I was like, if you only had to do that, how many more trees could you do? And they said probably twice as many. So I said, okay, we'll reimburse you $7.50 a tree and post a $15 a tree if you only have to do the 8-foot lengths on those. So it's cheaper for us to do the dead reds. So, and I'm talking with Deadwood Biofuels to see if we can possibly get those trees out of there and utilize them, because they're using pellets on those, making them into pellets, and they're looking for wood. So if we can get an agreement and work it out with the Forest Service, we can get that fuel loading out of there as well. So hopefully that works out.
Any further comments?
Just one question, Scott. Is all of this brown that we're seeing on this, is that all the dead trees?
Yeah, the red is the 2011 aerial survey. So that's kind of where the dead reds are at. And you can actually, Pennington County from the last survey is actually going down in acres just because of the sheer numbers that we've had infested. I think our population's starting to decrease, whereas Lawrence County is increasing. So I guess a little glimmer of light there. And talking to the entomologists, they're seeing the lifespan of the pine beetle expand, and then also the blue stain show up earlier. And if you go back and look at history like that they have done, it kind of singles hopefully the beginning of the end of the epidemic. So hopefully a couple more years and we'll be on the downhill slide here. So the crash goes a lot faster than the buildup. So let's hope that's the case. But we'll still have a lot of dead trees to deal with, particularly in the right of way.
Any other questions or comments?
We need to apprise the board of the, I don't know if lack of funding for this project. At least call your attention to it. If you look at the top of Scott's report where it says funding, the remaining Title III money available after, because could spend money earlier in 2012 rather than waiting until 2013. So the amount left of all the Title III money that we have on hand for any more funding is $52,678. The mountain pine beetle Title III money allocation for $211,951, we have not seen that check yet. So we want to make sure that we get that check before we start spending the money from that source. When we set up budget in 2013, we had a mountain pine beetle general fund for $60,000, and if you see the note on there that Scott has put that this is not supported by the offset revenue yet. We don't know if that revenue is going to come in, so there's really nothing supporting that $60,000 at this time, which means unless the revenue comes in for 2013 Title III money, and or if the revenue comes in for mountain pine beetle, he literally only has $52,678 in cash to spend on this project, which is very short of his goal needed. I don't know when we'll be assured that we'll get that $211,000.
Mr. Chair, can
Yes.
I checked with Senator Thune's office, and the money is authorized. It's just they're trying to, it was authorized in the transportation bill last summer.
Okay.
So, as usual, we've had this happen with the Title III before, where it takes them a while.
To get it. We just wanted to make sure the board was aware of it, that we have not gotten the cash yet.
Because I didn't want anybody to think that they had not run that through. It's been authorized since last summer.
Probably got to go to China to get
Yeah,
the money.
I know.
And
Well, what problem that will create is that you can't run that fund in the hole. So until we get the check, we need some place to charge those bills if he's spending more than $52,000. Now, in the Title III budget, we also have $52,000 budgeted for fire and $20,000 for search and rescue if they have to do a search and rescue on the property. So we do have if we don't have a fire, and I'm not sure what Denny is using the money for, we do have that much of a buffer. We just thought it was an important enough possible deficit that until we get that check, and you can rely on that we get that, you may be running in the hole. And we need permission basically to spend the $60,000 in general when it's not supported by a revenue, which means it's basically coming out of general fund reserves.
Commissioner Busker.
Is that mountain pine beetle money, or it's the Title III funds, is that tied up with the current mess that they have in Washington?
They've dealt.
So it's a possibility we won't get it.
No, it's already been passed.
I know there's a lot of things that have been passed that haven't been funded yet.
Well, I know that's true, but the transportation bill did go through and was passed last summer.
Yeah.
And just to clarify my numbers, that 63,788, that's what I had left in 2012 after all that we did in the spring and the spraying and all that. So that was carrying over into October. And then the 2011 951, that was the 2013 budget. And then we supplemented 200,000 of that back into 12 to beginning of this fall. So that wasn't really new dollars. That was old dollars. And then that 52,678, that's what's remaining after I spent that 200,000 and that 63,000. And then the 60,000 on the revenue, I did put in for Title II dollars through the RAC committee, and there was only like $44,000 left in that. I asked for the whole amount, and I ended up getting $1,400 because there was other projects that they felt were more worthy than mine. So, and then they said any remaining funds in there of unspent dollars they would give to our project. But at this time, we probably won't know what that is till September once those projects are all been submitted and paid out on.
Commissioner Holloway.
So it doesn't sound very promising for the 60,000 that you're going to get.
No, unless something comes through. But yeah, it's not.
And the 50,000 that you got from this Neiman's, was that actually received, or was that revenues that you had anticipated to support your budget? Or?
Yeah, and that's going to their Buck Mountain timber sale, and then any money left on there that we don't spend on there, we can probably go back into our program on what we're doing. So.
But Julie, did we have that shown as a revenue for 2013?
The Nyman's, no.
So obviously.
The $60,000 projection was a federal revenue.
Okay.
And to clarify, with everything that Scott has spent out of Title III, he only has $52,678 remaining until we get that check.
Yeah, I understand that.
Okay. Which is what the two, I don't know how much, this must be your projected.
That was what was in the 2013 for Title III.
Yeah.
And then the other budget fund we looked at during budget discussions was that emergency disaster fund. I think there's 330,000 in there. Mm-hmm. So there is that pot of dollars.
Which if that money can be spent for snow removal, it has not for many years. It has been building up. We used to levy an additional $10,000 every year. The board stopped that many years ago, so it's really been a stagnant amount in there for an emergency so declared by the board. I think we used it for the mosquito thing.
Okay.
We used a little bit of that.
I just got two more questions, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
As it relates to the 52,000 that the fire has earmarked out of Title III and the 20,000 that search and rescue has earmarked out of Title III, is that money received? Do we have that on hand?
The $52,000 is net them getting that money.
Pardon?
The $52,678 left.
No.
Is net, is after assuming they will spend that money.
After assuming that the fire
and
is going to spend those?
Search and rescue will spend their 20 and 52.
Okay. And then my question would be to Denny, the 52,000 that you've earmarked for Title III funds for fire, is that just to take care of unexpected expenses during a fire?
Excuse me, that 52,000 is out of what we generally refer to as old Title III funds. And we use that for wildland training classes for the firefighters, and then if we need to purchase any equipment or other items that are allowed under the old Title III program. We did decrease that from 63,000 in 2012 budget to 52 in the 2013 budget.
Okay, so it would seem to me like if we're running short of money, and maybe this is too early of a discussion, but it would seem to me like if we're running short of cash coming in, if we don't get the 2013 money, that we should use the 52 and the 20 to do mountain pine beeling. Then if by some chance China gives this federal government the 211,000 to send to us, then we could put that money back in. But if we don't cut the trees down, Denny will have a whole lot of training that he can do up in the hills. And so it would seem to me like that would be a better scenario to spend that money on than and I'm not downplaying your need for it, Denny. I'm just saying if you look at priorities, it would seem like doing this with the mountain pine beetle would be more important. Likewise with search and rescue. If they've got that earmarked for serious searches, I'm sure the sheriff will be able to come up with these $20,000 to cover that if we spend these mountain pine beetle money.
Can we use old Title III funds for the pine?
Yes. Yep. We have been. Yep.
Just, if I may, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I just gonna say, if I may, there was an email last week I received, well, several people in the county did, that from the, and I don't remember the person's name, that check that we're sort of looking for is tied up in a glitch in the federal government and just simply getting them printed and mailed.
Yeah.
That's what the email basically said. So I'm not gonna say it's still, you know, but it just, that was the reason for not getting it.
The check is in the mail.
No, it's messed up in their new accounting system is actually what it said.
Is
But we
there a
just
time-
thought the board should be aware of where the funding sits.
Well,
And you, if you're confident that that check is coming, sounds like it may be, you have that much more additional money coming, and it's not a cash issue until that money comes in. If it comes in much later than he's spending it, then we're into a negative balance in that fund. And that's when we can either loan money from general fund or reallocate money from the general fund, which I see is the next item, and you may. We just thought you should have this information before you lead into that next agenda item.
Well,
But, you know,
I
it's up
think-
to you.
I think that we ought to grab a hold of that 52,000 and the 20,000 that we've got set aside for search and rescue and fire training, and if we don't receive this 60, excuse me, the 60,000 that we thought we were going to get, that we ought to use that money to support that 60,000, whatever we're short in that, so that we can fulfill this full budget. And I don't know if you need a motion to do that, Julie?
Well,
what you're saying is you're floating it until.
you're floating it.
Well,
and-
I'm not just saying to float it, because I guess I heard you say that 60,000 is, you got $1,500 or something, or $1,400, and the chance of getting any more is slim to none.
Yeah.
So I want the money to support that full 60,000. And so do I need a motion to that effect, or do you need to come back and do some kind of a transfer with us?
Well, if you'd make that motion just to support it cash-wise until we know if and when we're going to get that check, and then we can come back with further funding options from the board. We just need that ability to draw into those, especially just for cash.
All right, but I'm not sure you're still understanding what I'm trying to say. I'm not saying to support the 211,000. I'm saying to support the 60,000.
Yes, then you would need a motion, and we could come back with the.
Okay, that would
basically,
be my,
you're taking budget authority of 52,000 and 20,000 away and reapplying it all under Title III to mountain pine beetle.
If I may, before we make a motion, is there a timeline that is critical? And the reason I'm asking that is that from this discussion, it strikes me that, the setup originally was Plan A with the budget and all that sort of thing. What you've shared with us today suggests we might need a Plan B and a Plan C. And you know the numbers, Scott knows the numbers, Denny knows the numbers, and you say in order to carry out Plan A, we would recommend Plan B or Plan C as options and bring that to the board the next meeting, and we act on it. That way, I think we've got a scramble going here right now, and clear thinking may not fight its way through. Is that a valid suggestion?
And Mr. Chair, I agree with that because we have in the next item a discussion on the contingency that does relate to this very same thing. And also the state of South Dakota is considering working cooperatively with the county in bringing in some funding. And that hasn't been determined how, but we're kind of up in the air on a couple of things. And I think Scott is sitting okay right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's not gonna hurt to wait 2 weeks and then maybe clear up the water a little bit to see how we're sitting, and yeah, that's not gonna hurt at all, so.
We okay with that?
I'd like to wait and do that.
Then that'll be the plan.
Okay.
We go to item 16.
So, Mr. Chair, the 2012 contingency funds, we talked about moving that $100,000 to the Mountain Pine Beetle project because we did not spend that contingency in 2012. And we decided to discuss that in January of 2013. So I am bringing that forward, and that is what I would like to discuss is moving that $100,000 in contingency for 2012 that we did not spend and put it towards the Mountain Pine Beetle budget.
Is that something that could be integrated into what was just done?
It certainly could. I mean, it was at the suggestion of the auditor that we wait till January, so I'm...
We haven't quite finalized our 2012 year-end cash balances, which this would attribute to one way or the other. I don't have the figure with me. During budgeting process, we assume so much of our budget is not spent and that we have a certain amount of cash balance. And we haven't gotten to that point. Maybe in 2 weeks we will be able to get to that point to be able to line that out for the board, that this is what, I know there are some other departments trying to move money over into special savings accounts that have already been established and maybe a new one. So I don't know if you want all those requests to come in at the same time so that you can discuss them all and see if you have enough money over and above what we used as projections.
Well, certainly I would have preferred to have done it in 2012, but it was auditor's recommendation. We moved it to this month, so.
Yeah, that would actually, you could have done it to 2012 instead of using 2013 money if you would have gotten board approval.
That is what I wanted to do, and it was suggested I wait.
So is this a discussion that could be bundled into what we're going to do 2 weeks from now?
You can do it at that point, yep.
Would that
if you want. You can allocate it today.
I'm fine to do it that way. I just want to make sure that we understand that.
Mr. Chair. Are we going to postpone all discussion on this?
Well, I think any thoughts that might complement the effort that's coming forward should be expressed at this time.
I have always been you set your budget for 2012, and at the end of 2012, either you spent the money or you didn't, and it goes back in and we use it for the next year. And I have always been against people moving it. Well, I didn't spend all my money last year, so I'm going to move it ahead this year. No, your budget is set for 2013. And I really don't like departments doing that, and now we're thinking about doing it, and I would, right at the moment, really, really be opposed to it.
Well, as I said, Ron, I did try to do that, and if you go back and look
No,
at
I would have been opposed to it then.
Yeah, but it was not, that is not what was recommended to us.
I mean, we have to fight the mountain pine beetle. We can stick millions of dollars into it. It's a never-ending hole right at the moment. And I'm not sure we're doing any good, but we have to try. But I think, you know, Scott can spend as much as we can give him. Correct? Yep. So we have to watch. There are other things in this county going on also.
Since there seems to be a split on the board, Lindell, maybe it would be a good suggestion to have a motion to see if we apply the $100,000 or not. It wasn't clear back then, as Ron said, and I don't believe we took a motion on it one way or the other. That would give us clear direction to include it or not.
Mr. Chair, maybe I can solve this problem if I can get a second to my motion. I'd like to postpone item 15A and item 16 until the next county commissioners meeting to allow the auditor and Denny and Scott time to put a plan together for the mountain pine beetle reduction.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. That doesn't satisfy.
No, it does not give us the direction we need on that 100,000.
Do you need that direction right now?
I think for us to include it in the discussion, we need direction whether the board's going to support it or not, as a majority.
I'll make a motion to take a 5-minute recess so we can get all 5 commissioners here before we vote on this.
Second.
Well, we have.
Is that a substitute motion?
No, because that would wipe that motion off.
If I understand Robert's rules right, a recess motion takes priority over a pending motion.
I won one?
If I'm right.
We'll go with that.
Okay.
Motion to take a 5-minute recess.
Thank you.
There's, all in favor?
Yeah, there was.
Motion.
So if they don't give me your $40.
Okay, what do you want me to do?
We will regroup, and Julie, would you tell us where we are? We do have a motion and a second. Would you
repeat that motion?
Tell us what the motion is, please.
It was moved by Davis and seconded by Belkry to postpone item 15A and item 16 to the next meeting for the auditor, county fire, and weed pest to put together a plan for combating the mountain pine beetle.
Okay, I think we could clarify that a little bit by adding to that motion something that clarifies the source of funding.
Yes,
That
what
would be considered in the planning.
In thinking about it, what we can do for projections rather than labeling it contingency fund, we will tell the board what unused cash balance they have in general fund. And we can actually list that out, pluses and minuses, so it's the whole picture minus what we promised for the 2013 budget, which will give you an unencumbered reserve total from all the underspent and overcollected revenues.
And also you'll cover that Title III monies.
Yes.
In the Plan A, B, and C.
Yes. And try not to take any budgeted money away from anybody. That will be our attempt. If the board wants to support it out of reserves, they can make the motion. If they don't want to, if they want to reallocate the 20 and the 52, which those people definitely don't want you to do, you can make that part of the motion.
So if the motion is amended to clarify that, you would have direction for proceeding?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure of the exact wording for an amendment to the motion. Commissioner Davis, are you comfortable with that?
It says
line of thought?
Whatever it takes to give them clear thought to the.
I believe we can do that under the existing motion because it says to support the mountain pine beetle
reduction
project. Yes.
I don't have a problem just the way it is, but.
No, I think the motion is, I have the direction I need.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. We've had a good discussion. And all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
So that moves us to item 17. Who's,
I presume Mr. McElgun will make his presentation for this item, Mr. Chair.
Good morning,
Pat.
Commissioners. Let me, first of all, express my appreciation for your support in the past years. And of course, as we go forward with the Ellsworth Task Force work, it's obviously very important to us as a community, but it's also important to us in terms of national defense. Also like to recognize the work of Commissioner Davis as a longstanding member of the task force. And with this morning, we have J.P. Donovan, who's also been a longstanding member of the task force and worked with us for many, many years. This year, I don't want to say it's worse than it's ever been, but it's pretty bad, and it's going to get worse. Contrary to what most people may think about how we're making incremental progress in the federal budget process right now. Right now, defense is running under a continuing resolution, which limits them in how much they can spend. And here we are 4 months into the budget year. And that's impacting them on a daily basis as we go forward. That continuing resolution is going to expire here within a couple of months. On top of that, we don't have a budget approved, and we're waiting for the 14 budget to be released and presented by the administration to Congress. So that means the DOD 14 budget we haven't seen. We would have normally had some indications by now of what that is. That budget would be considered by this Congress, and we'll have some idea of what's going to happen in the next budget year, which would start in October of this year. So we've got a lot of unknowns that we're dealing with right now, and I don't think it's going to probably get any better. Sequester, or the Budget Control Act of 11, took $487 million out of DOD over a decade, which was a reasonable number. I think DOD and Secretary Pennington worked that really hard, and they came up through the services and said, we can do that. That was probably somewhere, if you look at the total DOD budget, non-overseas contingency, you probably we're looking at $500 billion annually, so 10 years, you're looking at 10 times that. So they're really basically taking out 1/10 of the process. Under sequester, DOD gets tagged for another $500 billion, so you're doubling down with DOD. And we don't expect the full sequester to occur, but you don't know that a partial version of it won't occur. So we already know that we're down a little bit. We're going to be down some more. So we're trying to reassess where we are in relation to Ellsworth and its missions and what it does and how Ellsworth competes, if you will, as we move forward. You probably have heard in the last year or so the cry from the Secretary to have 2 more rounds of closure. Congress said no. The Air Force tried to shut down a number of units and reduce some more additional aircraft, and the Congress sort of said, kind of maybe. So they really didn't give the Air Force guidance or clearance to continue moving. So what we would need to do now is to try and take a look at what we're hearing from the Secretary of the Air Force, and you probably saw in a recent paper on the front page the article about what the impact would be if we got closer into the end of March or into March with DOD in terms of having to cut back. And then the Secretary of the Air Force took an extraordinary step here in the last week, matter of fact, and published 4 articles on internet in terms of defense issues, which address topics such as the Air Force's budget balancing problem, how small can the Air Force become, Air Force readiness depends on a smaller Air Force, and then the need to modernize what they have in terms of the inventory. So taking all that into consideration, at this point in time, we have talked to one of our consultants in D.C. that we worked with for 20 plus years now, and we've asked them to put together for us basically a 7-point analysis that we can go through in the next several months and kind of give us a fresh look or a third-party look of how we are standing in relation to weapon systems in terms of other bases and all the things that are going to be relevant to Ellsworth as we move forward. it's inevitable if you continue to downsize the military that at some point in time, Congress has got to give in to allow another round or two of closure. The Air Force has reduced literally thousands of aircraft in the last decade. Things have changed significantly since '05. It is not the same playing field. And right now we have a robust mission at Ellsworth. We've got 2 B-1 squadrons. We've got the RPA unit that's out there, and we have a financial services center that is not as was never as big as it was going to be, but it's big and it's competitive and it does work. But we want to try and stop at this point in time and start asking ourselves, what do we really need to be looking at? Where are the missions that we think we could compete for? How do we stand in terms of our competitors on other bases? And then give us that in terms of a roadmap as to where we want to be moving in the next in the next year or so. This effort that we're underway now, we've been at it since the early 1990s, and I think as a community we owe it to ourselves, just based on the sheer impact of that installation, to try and continue to be as competitive as we can be. It doesn't necessarily mean we're going to win everything, but we may be able to hold on to the things that we have. The next thing that could possibly come for Ellsworth in terms of a mission, obviously, is the long-range strike aircraft or the next-generation bomber or whatever DOD wants to call it or will call it. It is one of DOD's high-priority projects. With the Powder River expansion, hopefully we'll get a record of decision on that pretty soon, sometime within a year or so, and we will have a training area that will be very competitive and very appealing to the Air Force in terms of that mission as we move forward. But those are the kinds of things we're looking for. So in a nutshell, our letter of late December to you was to request an additional $10,000 in funding in this year for us to be able to afford to take on this project and then have us a better roadmap as we move forward during the course of the summer and the fall. It's going to be a tumultuous time. I think we've not seen the worst of it in terms of the impact as we draw down. Historically, our nation has done this time and time again. After World War II, we drew down. After Korea, we drew down. After Vietnam, we drew down. After the Cold War, we drew down. And now we've been in conflict since 9/11. And I think that we're going to see as we pull back from the 2 theaters we're in, there will still continue to be operations in the Western Pacific as the administration is tending to move forward moving that direction at the moment. But there's going to be drawdowns, and it's going to be significantly greater than most people think, both in the Air Force and in the other armed forces. So I appreciate your support, and I'll be standing by for any questions you may have.
Any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Pat, I just want some general information about the task force. What is the annual budget for the?
We currently receive $75,000 from the city, 15 from you. The chamber provides 15,000 basically in kind, which is office support, maintaining an office, and then we have stepped back from private fundraising for the last year or two and deferred that to the Black Hills Vision. The Black Hills Vision Board I thought they were meeting yesterday. I was scheduled to talk to them. They canceled yesterday's full board meeting, and I'm pending going back to them. If you go back in time, in the '05 round, what we did is we went to the Vision and asked them for a significant amount of money up front as part of that iteration, that $3 million fundraise, community fund, if you will. And then we had city money, and then we had state money. So basically, we have 75 and 15 fixed. We have the ability to go to the Vision, or if they don't support it, which I think they will obviously be able to support it, we'll go back on our own fundraising. We haven't done that for a year or so because we deferred to them primarily because they were going to say that was one of the 2 or 3 principal things they were raising money for.
And this study that you're talking about with the consultant, how much will that cost?
We estimated probably around $80,000.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Usually 10 grand, where does that come from?
contingency?
We don't have any. It's all going to Mountain Pine.
What I thought. Basically the same thing. We can spend as much as we want here.
Your choices are cash reserves, which we don't have a final figure for, and contingency transfer.
So last year, we had 15,000 in the budget form, and that's what we gave them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
all right.
And this 13 budget was 15, was also. This current budget we're coming
15
into
also?
is 15.
Was this presented at the budget hearings?
There was yes, we had a discussion on it, and there was, we thought for a period of time that it was approved, but apparently going back to look at the notes, it was discussed but not necessarily approved.
I think we were told at that time that it could be taken out of the 2013 contingency in 2013, so we couldn't do anything about it back then. I brought it up, tried to get it to be a budget item, but they suggested then it comes out of the contingency, so that's where I left it, and that's where it is.
Yes.
You gave us the information on the revenues, but the budget, your breakdown of how you spend that $90,000 that you have in cash, how is that budgeted to be spent?
Actually, yes, the salary, I have my salary is 30,000 flat, so I'm self-employed, so basically I pay all my taxes, et cetera. The rest of it is just for publications, for travel, memberships in like the Association of Defense Communities, and then things of that nature.
So if this study is going to cost $80,000, it doesn't look like you're going to have a balanced budget, or do you have a reserve?
We have some reserve funds, yes, sir.
Do you know how much is in the reserve?
It's probably a little under 100.
Okay.
But what we've done is trying to maintain that, so if we get to a crisis point, we have.
Sure.
We can go cut down some pine beetle trees. Which I have a few in my yards. So basically, we just need a little. We're asking for some support this year. We have a reserve. We will probably spend the bulk of that reserve getting through this project, and then we're going to be back into annual budget and then build up again. In the 05 round, we spent. We were authorized among. Well, we had allocated among public, private, and state. Public being Rapid City and Pennington County, we were basically operating with about $1 million budget. Mm-hmm. We did not expend all of that, and we used some of that to continue the program on forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Have you got a bill into the legislature? Or
there was a bill in last year, which does not have a deadline on it for expenditure for $500,000. I think the Development Authority has spent some of that, not much. Our intent is to go to the Vision Board and ask for some support, and also to go to the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which is managing that fund, and then ask them for support going forward.
Any further discussion?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm not opposed to this, but perhaps that's how we lump everything in. We don't let this go longer, but maybe not approve it today till we get that information from Julie about the under-expended funding.
It strikes me that this certainly fits into that discussion, and Julie, is it appropriate that we do that?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to clarify something here, and we're talking about two different things. When we're talking about the unexpended funds, we're talking about 2012 funds being rolled over into 2013. We're not talking about that. We're talking about taking the 10,000 out of the 2013 contingency. That's what we talked about back during the budget era last year, and kind of carried forward into here.
The discussion on the contingency fund and using cash reserves for mountain pine beetle would be leftover 2012 funds. At the beginning of 2013, you have another $100,000 in your contingency fund that by motion the board can spend any way they want. They just didn't have a need for it in 2012.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. What's the wish of the board?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I would make a motion that we take $10,000 out of the 2013 contingency fund to fund the total amount of $25,000 that for the Ellsworth Task Force.
Is that 25,000 additional?
No, the total amount 15 and another 10.
So
We already
how
got
much-
15 in the budget.
So you want an additional 10 from contingency?
Right.
Yeah, that's the amount we want in the motion, Ken, if you don't mind.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to take $10,000 from the 2013 contingency fund and allocate it to the Ellsworth Task Force. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 18. Who leads the way on this
I
one?
can probably do that. Ken and I attended a regional rail authority meeting with Ben Snow and who's the guy from the state? Ken?
Bruce
Lindholm, yep.
And it clarified quite a few things that I had problems with the rail authority. And what they're looking for is to allow them to get a hold of Jay and develop some plans and contracts that we would have a chance to look at and see if we would be interested in doing it. It's not doing anything, it's just trying to start some paperwork to make it legal. And I guess that we'd be willing to answer some questions if anybody has any on it. It's a better deal and we have much more authority than I thought we originally had on it. So I think since I've made this big speech, I can't make the motion, but I would hope that we would approve them coming and talking with our legal counsel. They're going to do that with Rapid City and Box Elder for sure, and maybe go into some discussions with Meade County and see if they would be interested.
So, given that, Julie?
I would like to be included in some of those because it has a lot to do with like forming a TID or a overlap or anything like that so that we can be in close encounter so we can see how it's going to affect our books. And I would like the board to be aware is that, you know, when we do a lot of we're a conduit for a lot of bonding that we do for other entities, and we're just basically the approving, and we have no responsibility to pay that back. The one thing I would say is I checked with the Department of Revenue, if you create a railroad authority and there is debt, and they don't pay their debt, Pennington County and somehow the other entities are responsible for that debt payment, which you have to do a levy opt-out for. I just want that up from the beginning, and that's part of why I want to be in on the discussion so we can make sure we're as protected as we can be if the board goes forward with it.
And that was always my concern, and it kind of alleviated it quite a bit for me when you can put provisions in this memorandum of understanding and bylaws that you don't have to do that unless you have already voted to do it, and we get the chance to look at every project, and you can require as much security from those people as you want. So he said, you know, the odds on doing that are very remote.
Very rare.
But
and it's never been
it is
done
still
in
a
South
possibility.
Dakota.
But this board would still retain all of the safeguards I thought were necessary to prevent that. But
Well, that's good to hear.
Right.
Yeah.
It could amount to that.
And it will have to flow into our financials from what I understand. So we can make sure that all those requirements and timeframes are in there, in the original agreement, so that we don't have any issues later that we have with some of our conduit units now.
And Ben has some agreements that have already been made and in place that we could get copies
Yep.
of.
And it's been done across the state, so I'm sure there's other counties that we can talk to see if they've protected themselves as well.
Heron and Beetle County, we looked at that one, and that has a lot of these provisions that.
Beetle?
Beetle.
Okay, I'll give her a call. Thanks.
Heron.
So in terms of this issue, who takes the lead and brings all these other people together?
I think Ben Snow probably would be the one.
And so if Ben Snow ignores Julie Pearson in the process, what happens?
He won't do that because we need to tell.
And so
we can make sure that Julie's included in it, absolutely. Yep.
So the action that we need to take at this point is?
I don't know if we really need any action. All I guess I was looking for was to allow, I'll make a motion to allow Ben Snow and his group to contact our legal department and start the process of working out some agreements and some...
Legal department and the auditor?
Yeah, and the auditor.
Appropriate people in Pennington County. That's it.
It's just the preliminary stages of working out some kind of agreement.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. And Karen, you can get all the words in there that are required. Any further discussion?
Just wanted to clarify, Mr. Chair, that out of all of these rail authorities that have been put in across the state, and yes, I totally agree, that was my first assumption that Pennington County could get nailed, but there hasn't been one default in all of them that have been out there.
However, Mr. Chair, one of the things that I did notice that these are heavily farming communities. They're using it for transportation of their product. And so, you know, that makes some difference as to the success of those particular railroad authorities.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, item from the chair. We have item A, the Department Head Merit Awards. How do we handle that in terms of, I don't see Holly, here. Holly, do we make a motion for each individual department head, or?
If you wish to include them all, you can certainly do that. If you wish to leave some out, you can certainly approve them by individual as well.
Julie?
We would also like an effective date in there. Thank you.
And what would be, when you say an effective date, is there any kind of a standard time that works better for your office, or in terms
Well,
of?
in the past, merits, and that's what these would be for the department heads, were done in January or July 1st. But the board can make them effective February 1st. They can make them retro to January 1st. It's just so that we know which date to pick and which month to load it on. If you don't clarify the date, we'll get calls and then we'll have to come back.
Okay, thank you.
Am I correct, Julie, in your salary schedule here? The last one we really gave to anybody, the majority was July of 10?
Yes.
None for 11 or 12?
Mm-mm.
God, we did a good job.
I think it was a budgeting issue. We didn't do that, but this is in the budget for this year.
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the salary increases as been presented to us. We've we have done merit or evaluations on all these people. At least my recollection was that we spoke highly of them all. So if that's true, then we should give them the merit raise. And I'm not supposed to make a speech with the motion. I'll take my punishment and go on.
I'll second it.
Do we have a second?
I was going to poke you.
Do we have a second?
Effective January 1.
Effective January.
And so as we do have a motion and a second, and since you made your comments previously, I will accept no further comment from you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I make a substitute motion to include everybody but Mr. Tinsvold, who was hired in May. He's worked for us for less than a year, and I think we gave him a pretty good salary when he started.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Substitute motion. You can discuss this one, Commissioner Holloway.
I guess I'm going to disagree with that because we have had a tremendous we've needed to change the IT department to bring it up to date. We've needed to do some major changing of how we operate, and he has successfully and skillfully led that situation. So I would vote against that motion.
Well, I would agree, except he's making $79,000 a year currently, and been here about 7 months. So. And not that he's doing a bad job at all. It's time frame for me.
So would you consider it in July 1st?
Substitute.
Possibly, yeah.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility of something that's addressed later? Or is the merit situation one time?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a substitute to the substitute. Can we do that?
Sure. We'll try it.
All right. Approve all of the merit increases has been provided to us, with the exception of Russ Tinsvold and correction. Approve them all to be effective January 1st, with the exception of Russ Tinsvold, have his be effective July 1st.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. I think we've kind of explored all the avenues, so...
I have something to say. I'm going to vote for this. I think it's a good compromise. But my question would be, and I don't expect it to happen, but sometime in May or in March or April, he really screws up. Can we reverse his raise then July 1st? Or is it permanent when we vote for it today?
You can always redo a motion.
Okay, thanks.
So in view of all that comment, are we ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, it's a substitute motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. And Karen will depend on you to make sure it's all correct.
And again, Russ, not that you're doing a bad job, it's the time frame. You're doing a great job, and I told you that the other day.
I think that was a fair compromise.
Thank you.
Next item is item 20, Planning and Zoning. Board of Adjustment is item 28. Do we have a motion?
Move to go into a Board of Adjustment.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion carried.
Morning, Dan Jennison, Pennington County Planning Director. Item A is a variance request, 12-11, for William Young to reduce the minimum required front yard and side yard setbacks from 25 feet to 0 feet. in a general ag and limited ag zoning district. If the board approves the applicant's setback variance request, staff would recommend 3 conditions be attached. This was continued from the last meeting in order for the applicant to see if he could acquire an easement or go across the neighboring property to the north of him. We did get a letter from that neighbor indicating they were not in favor of granting an easement on their property. He also was required or requested to submit a site plan, which I believe you all have the new site plan in front of you, and do a floodplain study. And he did do a floodplain study. The staff report indicates that he did do it and it was approved. It is below the base flood elevation. However, he can raise it 1 foot, and he's indicating to do as such. And so he also has moved the storage shed from on top of the drain field.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
When you say raise it 1 foot, put the garage up 1 foot?
Yes, he has to bring in fill to raise that area, and they can do that per the flood ordinance. They can raise the base flood elevation, or not raise the base flood elevation, but raise the structure 1 foot.
Wow, that's going to be a sharp incline to drive into, isn't it?
Well, I was out there and with Mr. Young, and it's not going to be a garage anymore. Correct?
It someday may become a garage. Right now, all I'm asking for is the shed.
The shed which is already on the property right now.
So if we give him a variance for 5 foot from the front and the side for a garage, or for a shed, and then he decides he wants to have a garage, does he have to come back? Or is that just a building permit then?
Well, it depends on how you approve the variance request. The variance could be just for a 5 foot setback for that location, for a structure to be in that location.
So that would include a shed, a garage, a new house, whatever.
Well, he already has a house, but it could be in addition to that existing house. It does have to be, I mean, you can specifically make a condition that it's just for this structure, or you could have it for any structure within that corner. If he wants to go in a different part of his property and reduce the setback, typically they do another variance.
Mr. Young, do you have any comments you want to make? Or?
Absolutely. Yes, sir. Just to clarify, would you bring that up, please? Just to clarify, I am asking for a 5x5 variance for this existing shed. Someday, yes, I would like to build a garage, but that is not in the foreseeable future, and I'd be happy to come back to this board at that time. The 5x5 variance was based on pulling a tape measure around, looking at my options, and making sure that I was out of the floodway per the Renner and Associates report that I have gathered. Also, it is my understanding that the base flood elevation means the ground floor of the structure needs to be above that base flood elevation. And currently the shed base floor is above the base flood elevation because it sits on a 6x6 timber, and then there is a 2x6 subfloor, and then 1 inch of plywood on top of that, which would bring it up and out of the base flood. As you know, the Dark Canyon Road is fairly remote. On this graphic that I have for you, you can see this is right from the rapid map. This is my lot right here. Beyond my lot, there are only 4 other homes in Dark Canyon. And one of them is used seasonally, is my understanding. On the next slide, this is where the shed sits. I was able to, with the help of my neighbor and his bobcat and chains, remove the shed from the drain field there. And that's looking down towards, you can see the roof of the existing structure where I'm asking for the variance. The next slide is looking from the road up towards the house. You can see just a very similar shot. And then the next slide, this is important because you can see this is the property corner that you also have on the site plan. Mm-hmm. This is the main roadway. The shed is well off the roadway. It's approximately 10 feet. And even if I were to plan on building down the road, and again, I would come to this board if that's the recommendation, I plan on leaving this oak tree. The shed as it sits is not a hazard in any way. It's above the flood, it's well off the road, and it will provide me with needed storage. And then we can go to the next slide. Again, it's not in the floodway. There's only 4 houses beyond. I've had letters of support from my neighbors to the north as well as the south. The adjoining neighbor to the west was at our last commission meeting and indicated that they have no opposition to it. And I feel that I've met every requirement that the county has asked me to provide. And I would urge you to approve this 5x5 setback. And I'm happy to answer any and all questions you might have.
Is the 5x5 setback as it exists now?
It's actually, if we go back to this image here, I'm a little more than 5 coming off of both the front and the back. When Mr. Buskerud was out yesterday, I actually had an X on the ground that indicated where the 5x5 foot setback is, and it's beyond that. The reason I'm looking at the 5x5 setback is just in case someday I wish to put in a garage. And the only reason that the original motion came up with the 0-foot setback was that was the advice that I received from planning and zoning. They said, ask for the 0 and then try to negotiate if they don't give you that. Otherwise, I would never have asked for a 0-foot setback.
Kind of like Pawn Stars.
Commissioner Holloway.
Dan, if we approve the 5x5, is there certain dimensions that we would approve it for? I mean, if we're not saying 5x5 all the way around that lot, how would you handle that?
Actually, the 3, well, you could add a condition, and actually you could approve it with just one condition because he's met the other 3 that were proposed, and that condition could read that the variance is for a structure in the northeast corner of the lot for a 5-foot setback. In other words, if he wanted to build in the southeast corner, he would have to ask for another variance.
And he could build under what your wording is, anything that he wants. Right now, we're approving the variance for a shed, but if he wants to put the garage in, he doesn't have to come back before us.
Correct.
Okay.
But he would have to get a building permit.
Correct.
To make sure that he fits the...
He needs a building permit currently for the shed that is already there, unless it's under 144 square feet. So.
It is under 144 square feet.
Does not need a building permit, but it's still supposed to meet the setbacks.
Just to be ordinary. Just to be ordinary.
Well, just so we can get this moving, I guess, I would make the motion to approve this variance for a 5-foot front and side setback on the north, what is that, the northeast?
East
corner of that lot.
Is there a second?
For the purposes of moving this along and discussion, I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the variance 5x5 northeast corner. Anyone else wishing to make some comments?
Please.
Good morning, Commission. Terry Hipple, I was here last time before it was continued. I got to say I am shocked. I've been trying to work with Dan's office for this last month to receive information on any new information that was submitted regarding this variance request, and for whatever reason I wasn't able to get full information until yesterday, and then augmented it yet this morning. So last night I prepared a response or a comeback based upon a garage proposal that's been before you folks for a month. And I walk in here this morning and find out, oh, by the way, we're going to just do a shed. And it's a shed that was started illegally. It's already on the site. And frankly, I'm shocked. I do have I feel a nice presentation regarding why I do not believe that Mr. Young should be granted a variance for a garage. And much of it had to do with the fact that there are existing ordinances that you have and you've been enforcing in the canyon that require a 25-foot front setback, and in this case with General Ag Limited Addicts 25 all the way around. And I was willing to even grant, or if I'd be willing to go along with a 5-foot setback on the south side of the house so that Mr. Young could build a garage adjoining his house on the south side, since he does not have access anymore on that driveway on the north side. Karen Ellison pulled her support away. But I guess, this makes me feel like we're bait and switch. We just started over, and I got the rug pulled out from under me. I had some nice photos and slides and actually new information that wasn't here last time, because this was a new, chance for Mr. Young to come back and present for a garage, a 20 by 25-foot garage, not an existing structure that was done illegally. I'm floored. And in fact, Commissioner Buskerud was out just the other day, and I saw him, and I stopped him on the road, and I have a photo. I guess it's worth sharing that one photo with you folks, if I may. Had a really nice presentation on the first 2 pages, and I'll still submit them for what they're worth. But, Dan, I've got copies for Mr. Young if he needs them. You kind of stole my thunder. My whole program went out the road. So I'll just say, as I pointed out to Commissioner Buskerud, when I felt that we were trying to discuss, is this an undue hardship on Mr. Young? I wanted to point out just 250 feet down the road to the north from Mr. Young's property is another similar property, similar topography. We live in a canyon, folks. Hills, mountains. I was a flatlander, so these are mountains to me. But this neighbor, Roger Rowe, has excavated out a driveway and gone up the steep hill and excavated out a flat spot that could be a buildable site. I apologize that it's a one-dimensional photo, and I had that one showing a flat spot, and Commissioner Buskerud would certainly have some comments to other commissioners attesting that it is a similar topography. It's very steep, and yet Mr. Rowe excavated it out and started last fall, and I don't know if he's done for the winter, and then we'll continue on this coming spring. But it's not a hardship. It's what you do when you live in a canyon. You dig things out with excavators, and away you go. Mr. Rowe is actually an excavator and is, I understand, good friends with Mr. Young. He lives 2 houses down. He has all the equipment in the canyon to do this work. And I had attached a photo that you had from the last time, basically saying I still believe that Mr. Young, on the last page, has room on the north side, south side. I'm getting my directions. On the south side, which would be the hillier side, not the side with the driveway, where you could certainly excavate out, and certainly if you granted a 5-foot easement on that south side, there should be ample room to put a full garage there. Or now that I find out it's a shed, frankly, I'm shocked why we need to have the shed in the front. It's no longer a garage. It no longer requires a driveway. You don't have to park in the darn thing. He had a shed in the back of the house that started this whole mess when things moved and he put a new shed there. I believe there's ample room for one or both sheds to be in the back of the house right now. But I'd still go along with, if a 5-foot easement was granted to the south, he could put in a full-blown garage and or his shed and still meet the 25-foot setback that your ordinances require.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to have an opportunity to have a rebuttal.
And I guess,
He's finished.
you know, he could rebuttal. Now, I you know, got some closing things, and it's on there, you know, and as of this writing, the red shed, which is the last paragraph on the second sheet, the red shed that was on the drain field has, yes, in fact, been moved. Unless he moved it this morning that I didn't see again, it's been moved further to the north. Now it's definitely in violation of your 25-foot setbacks required by general ag and limited ag all the way around. The new shed that's sitting down on the roadway, which I now understand is what we're here to discuss, is in violation and has been since the very beginning. And I'm floored why, when this started in October and he was ordered to stop, why that wasn't moved right then. I mean, why are we 3 months later and we're pulling a bait and switch trying to get a variance for a building, and then maybe sometime down the road, possibly, if I feel like it, I may build a garage. And by the way, based on his site plan for a garage that he had, he'd be in violation of one of your people discussing that it's too close to the drain field. But I guess that kind of goes out the window now because it's no longer a garage. So frankly, folks, I'm impressed. Mr. Young can certainly have a rebuttal, and I'd be glad to ask anything else. I'm at a loss, though. You know, how can this happen? And why would you allow this? Kind of like back to when you're trying to establish the hardship for a garage. I can understand putting in driveways and doing things. There's a certain level, but how do you establish that you have a hardship for a shed that you do not need to drive into? It can be placed in the back of the house today with no issue. It could possibly be placed on one side of the house without an issue, and with a variance on the south side for allowing excavation, none of this should be an issue. So I'm new to your community, but I'm impressed that this is the way this has been allowed to happen for 3 months, working this closely with planning and zoning.
Any questions or comments from the commission?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. Dan, have you been out there lately? I guess...
I was out there probably a month ago.
I was out there yesterday and looked, and Mr. Young showed me that he had moved his red shed, and now, and that's fine, because we needed him to get it off the drain field. But now, is he in the 25-foot setback right where it is now?
I'm not exactly sure where it is, but it is supposed to meet the setbacks. So he would need to move it again. Or you could
give him a variance for the whole length of that.
Yes.
I don't intend to do that. Frankly, I was just about ready to vote in favor of this, contrary to my usual stance, because I drove down that road yesterday and I just about turned around 2 or 3 times because I thought I'd missed it. I mean, when you get down to his place, you are out. You know, it's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there. And there's a house that is down the road a little bit that is probably closer to the road than this shed is. And the fence goes right down the edge of the road. But I can't vote for it if all he did was move the shed from one bad place to another.
Mr. Chairman, may I please have an opportunity to comment?
Come up if you...
The red shed will be moved off of the property. It will be completely removed from Dark Canyon just as absolutely soon as I can get it down the hill. As you know, that the weather has been terrible lately. We had to chain the Bobcat in order to drag it off of the drain field. It will be moved. My neighbor has pointed out that he thinks that I should build my shed or possibly one day a garage in another location. If you look at the site plan, my lot is very restrictive in terms of where I can build such a structure. Mr. Hipple, who is the only person in my neighborhood who is opposed to this, has had issues with the county as well in terms of floodplain development and things like that. He's trying to make this a personal fight, and I'm sorry about that. He has nearly 1,300 feet of fence in the floodway. You can see it on this image, as well as he's planted up to 100 trees in the floodway. This is a personal fight that he has with me, and I'm sorry about that. When he moved into the neighborhood, I actually welcomed him with a bottle of wine because I was so happy to have a new neighbor out there that I thought would do good things for our canyon. What I'm asking today, again, is just merely a 5x5 setback. You can put whatever parameters on it. This site where the shed sits is really the only place that a structure can be built. It would be possible to put something up on the hillside behind my house, but that would entail a great deal of effort to do so, and it would certainly make the structure less usable for me. I'm well off the road. My neighbors on all sides have said they don't have any problem with even a 0-foot setback. The one person who is in opposition is Mr. Hipple. And again, that's a personal vendetta.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So if you put a garage in there, Bill, your entrance would have to come from the front or from the side?
If I were to put in a garage in that exact site, which again, someday I would like to do, I could come in from either the front or head on.
Because I just keep thinking of your sloping and everything. I mean, that's going to be difficult to get into as a garage.
Well, Ron was out yesterday, and actually, Don Holloway's been out as well. It could be done, and it could be done relatively easily.
Without impeding anything into the roadway.
That's correct.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Mr. Young, you said that if you build a garage, you could come in off the road, you'd come in head-on. Looks to me like either one of those places, what you're talking about, you'd still have to use your neighbor's road to get into your garage. Is that correct?
Let's make one thing crystal clear. That road is not a road. That is a road that was cut to do some excavation work, and it was never intended to be used as a driveway.
But whose property is it on?
We share it. I have just a little bit of it, and she's got the lion's share of it.
So some of it's on your property, some of it's on hers?
That is correct.
So you have a mutual agreement or anything in writing that allows you to use that?
Just a handshake.
Her share and hers too?
Just a handshake.
Okay.
And that's traditionally how things have worked in our canyon.
Well, I come from a long line of ag people, and that's how you did business way back then. So
that's how we do business most of the time in Dark Canyon.
But I guess what I'm headed to is why couldn't you use that trail, I'll call it, to get back behind the house to build a garage?
It is really quite steep. Going up there, it's Ron has seen it and Don has seen it. It's quite steep. And we had, like I said, we had to put chains on the Bobcat just to get up to where the drain field is to pull that empty shed out of there. And I'd still have to use part of her property to do so.
And she wasn't willing to grant an easement?
Not a permanent easement.
Well, I guess I don't understand as long as you got an agreement between the two. How long have you been using that road?
Well, that approach is relatively new. I imagine that was I think we put that in last summer sometime in order to do
Trail where their cars sitting
yeah,
there?
where that car sits now, that trail was originally put in at the, the county told Karen Ellison that she needed to move an outhouse that was on her property. And so literally, my neighbor Roger Rowe cut this, and you can see where it branches here. It forks off here onto her place. This is the property line here, so only about this much of it is mine. But that was cut so we could get that outhouse and move it off of where it was sitting at the request of the county. And like I said, I would love to put a garage in there. There's no question about that. Unlike my neighbor, I can't afford to do everything in one fell swoop. I'm a school teacher. I work real hard at it. This shed will take care of my needs until the time comes when I can find the money to put in a garage. And again, I'm more than happy to come back in front of this board at that time.
Any other comments? You can comment as long as it's not personal.
Thank you, Commission. I never intended to make this personal, and I am not going to. I did want to address Commissioner Buskerud's comments that he drove down that canyon and was tempted to turn around a number of times, and, you know, admittedly, there's houses right on the roadway, there's fences right on the roadway. I mean, it is dark canyon. And I want to point out, those were already there. They were either grandfathered or whatever, or you know, at least they're not germane to this issue. They're in excess of a year old, and many of them much, much older. So while those exist today, that shouldn't have any bearing on this. This case, I believe, should fly or die on the merits of the ordinances that you have in place and the way that you have been enforcing them as of late. And I'm not making this personal, but I had comments in here where, you know, page 4, section 4, is this in the public interest and whatever, and I had listed all these little points. Well, one of the things that I was going to point out was that your county has been doing a very good job, I believe, of enforcing the ordinances that you have in place. Down the road about a mile, it's actually on the blacktop in the 2-lane section where there's much more room. There's been ongoing issues with people that have structures in, I believe, the floodplain, Mr. Jennison has pointed out. One was a jungle gym swing set type apparatus that was actually required to be moved, and it was 60 feet off of the roadway, but it was in the floodplain. And another owner that I talked to down there wanted to build a garage and was denied a permit, or you know, couldn't build a garage because it was in a flood zone. And that owner asked, well, can we at least build a shed so we can park our Harleys in? I mean, a shed, I'm assuming, similar to the one proposed. And he was denied, even though they were willing to build that up, as you've been proposed here, building this site up to above the flood base, and was denied. And I asked Mr. Jennison specifically, why was that one denied? And he says, well, we're holding them to a higher standard. And I believe it's because that individual is a builder and they didn't want to set a precedent. Well, I believe a precedent has already been set. You are enforcing the ordinances that you have in that canyon. Those pre-existing structures are there. Darn it all, you wouldn't approve them today. Why in the world would we approve this shed that was started illegally, and da-da-da-da-da. And last comment, and I'll quit. It's been suggested that this elevation be brought up for the shed that was the garage and is now the shed, and that he has a 6x6 timbers, and so that the base of that floor of that shed is a foot above the ground. Well, I certainly am not an engineer, nor am I an attorney that can read your ordinances, but when I was reading them, I believe it had to do with the base level of the ground had to be a foot above the base, because it had to do with, if a flood ever happened, would structures be moving and going down and blocking bridges and having a flood of 72 again? Well, this is a wooden shed with wooden timbers, da-da-da-da-da, but that was a side note. So I'm impressed, and I'm very much in favor of enforcing the ordinances that you have in place today. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So Dan, I guess I need clarification about that elevation thing. And having said that, I remember going to some meetings at the city about flood elevation, and when he said that, I wondered, because I remembered that it had to be built up too.
It is the lowest floor of the structure that has to be above the base flood elevation. And that's what this would be, is the lowest floor of the structure. Lowest floor level, the top of the floor, is what they measure from. And he will have to have an engineer or surveyor verify that it's at or above that base flood elevation.
I mean, you know, those pictures look like that. No, I just want to make sure that we understand that clarification.
If it would please the commission, I do have the floodplain development permit, and it indicates that the proposed finished floor should be 3566.3, which is exactly 1 foot above base flood. And it says minor compacted fill will be needed less than 1 foot. And then I also have the FEMA map with the plat overlay indicating where the 100-year floodway ends. And the engineer actually on the report says the proposed development is located in the 500-year fringe, and he has marked out floodway and marked out 100-year flood fringe.
I did talk to the engineer in regards to the base flood floodplain development permit. It is in the 100-year floodplain. The map kind of shows it out in the 500-year, but when it's that close, that's why you have a study to clarify exactly where the 100-year floodplain is on the property. And that's what the floodplain development permit did, and that's why he has to raise it 1 foot.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I have a question, Jay. For this and future variances, so we give a variance to the front yard setback to 5 feet along a narrow road, and 2 cars meet in that spot and one of them runs into that tree, and are we liable for giving a variance? Can we be?
You know, we've had this discussion probably 15 times
Yeah.
in the last dozen years.
Okay. Well, when you get old, your memory kind of fades a little.
Of course, and I think my canned response has been, I can't guarantee you that you wouldn't be sued, because in today's world, you sue everybody and hope something sticks. But I don't think that is part of your obligation in considering those. You're considering hardship, and I don't have the ordinance in front of me, but I don't believe the county is liable for 2 cars that do that. Could they sue you? They could sue anybody. But I don't know how else to answer that. I don't know of any precedent. Yeah.
A signed memo to that effect that you probably
Yeah.
take responsibility in case we do.
However, I'm going to ask something further, Jay, if it's okay. We do have, we do have different departments who say whether or not they're for or against it, and often the highway department is not. So then, does that put a certain amount, increase our liability as a county when we grant the variance and go against what the highway department wants?
Could that point be brought up in a court of law 5 years from now when somebody got injured? Sure. What effect it would have? I think you have, your county, you have certain immunities. You have a certain level of sovereign immunity. These are decisions that by ordinance you make based on that criteria. I don't see anything in here that says consider whether or not 2 cars might collide some time frame down the road. So I honestly don't know what to tell you. I don't know of any precedent where this ever happened, where those concerns have ever come to fruition.
There was a highway one where county hadn't cleaned off the highway of snow and ice. I think I can't remember how it turned out. There was one somewhere.
Well, that was a lawsuit years and years ago, and then they, if you remember, they repealed the statute that specifically talked about liability to the county. After that case was rendered from the Supreme Court, legislature repealed the statute that case was based on. So that statute doesn't even exist anymore.
North Street Road, when a motorcycle got killed there 3 years ago. They're suing us now. Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Dan, can I clarify something here? If I remember right, this started out wanting to be a garage there.
That's what everything says.
Correct, yes. May I address that as well, sir? I truly intended to do nothing wrong with this shed. I thought that with the 144 square feet, it was small enough that I didn't need a building permit, and I thought that I was doing everything right. As soon as I heard from the county, and I also need to be crystal clear, I was not ordered to stop work. Rex came out and visited with me one afternoon, and that same day I came down to talk to Dan. I didn't receive a letter. I didn't even receive a verbal warning. I complied based on the fact that Dan indicated that there would be an issue. Again, advice from planning and zoning, if you're going to try to get a variance for your shed, you might as well ask for a variance for a garage one day.
Is that what you were instructed to do?
That is what I was instructed to do. My drawings that you have, they have a sample drawing that I was given. I tried to follow what their example is. I've got it. I've got what it looks like. And I didn't make a single move without the advice of, and granted, I'm not trying to throw Dan under the bus because it wasn't Dan who gave the various advice along the way. But again, I want to be crystal clear. I've complied with everything that the county has asked me to do. I really meant no harm. Quite frankly, when I started this, I just wanted a shed to get my motorbike out of the snow, to have a place to store some tools, and so I could get rid of that red shed.
So are we back just to the shed then?
And again, I will be crystal clear. The shed is my main goal. One day, perhaps I would like to put in a garage, and I was instructed to ask for both at the same time.
Well, Dan, can we approve this just for the shed, and then if he wants a garage, then we address it differently, or address it again to see whether or not?
You certainly could do that. I mean, it's going to be the same issues that come up, whether it's the garage or the shed. It's still a 5-foot setback.
I disagree with that. I think there'll be a major difference of how he's going to get into a garage.
Yeah, that's my thing.
Okay, then you can certainly do that.
One more time.
I'm sorry for coming up. I feel I have to respond, and once again, these are not personal, but I am, this entire month, and I'd hired an attorney to help prepare things and put it forth. This entire month, I have been led to believe that we have been talking about a garage and hardship, and you know, it's up to Mr. Young to prove that he has that hardship. Well, on the flip side, we've all been through issues. I feel it's been up to me to prove that he doesn't have a hardship. And quite frankly, while Mr. Young is not willing to throw Mr. Jennison under the bus, I don't know if I'm going to be quite that benevolent. I feel like I, as a taxpayer, have been completely deceived, and you, as a board, have been deceived from day one. Every single piece of information has been a garage, every drawing, everything. And how in the world can I prepare to come before you informed when this feels like a cronyism? It's been something that, if in fact he's been advised since day one, well, if you want a shed, ask for a garage and do this. People, this is not the way we do business. And just like on a handshake, this is not the way a department should run. I am one of your taxpayers, And I've been doing my level best to bring forth a clear and concise argument. And you were on the cusp of approving a variance that, quite frankly, I was not prepared to defend. I still go back and say you have clear ordinances and things in place. And though Mr. Young says he didn't know he was violating anything, I'll take that at face value. But I go back to that family has owned that property for 70 years and it's clear enjoyment and use of that property the entire time.
Sir.
And
Evaluating someone else's comments, I think, is not appropriate. And in terms of the ordinance does provide for variances. The judgment surrounding the variances remains with the departments and with this board. The right to use your property in a manner that does not affect someone else's property or public safety is a criteria that I personally hold as the foundation of planning and zoning. I have asked a question previously in other matters. How far away do I have a right to control what someone else does with their property? Those are kind of standards that I use when I address planning and zoning matters. The timing of information, the changing of minds, the redirection, we have no control over. So at this point in time, given the discussion, I think we're going to close comments.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question for him, if I could.
Okay, you.
Mr. Hippel, you've said you came prepared for the garage, and obviously I've read over your letter and all the things you point out that the problem with the garage. It looks like if we're only now possibly considering it for the storage shed, how does that change your arguments? Would you have more arguments if it was just a shed rather than having a car drive in there, or less arguments?
well, and off of the cuff, I guess I would go back to first, what are the criteria that would determine a hardship for placing a shed that close? That's probably a main thing.
All right.
And then basically just going back to, you've enforced these ordinances in the canyon, to the best of my knowledge, consistently.
Sure. And so that would be the same whether it was a shed or a garage?
Yes, there's probably a few more points in the garage, but it's switched. So
yeah, so it's less with the garage, the shed, than it is the garage. I mean, I think you've made all of your arguments.
Yeah, there may be
and your
less
arguments would be primarily the same whether we're talking a garage or a shed.
Well, but I would have asked you, do you normally grant sheds on this kind of a close setback? And do you have a higher threshold for determining is there a hardship that requires the shed be there?
Well, we try to address each one of these, deal with each one of these on an individual basis. Look at each one of them on the individual basis.
Okay, let's close discussion and make a determination as to the disposition of this item.
Could I have the secretary read back the motion, please?
Moved by Holloway and seconded by Busker to approve the variance to reduce the required front yard and side yard setbacks from 25 feet to 5 feet.
Any further discussion by the board?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Is that, did it say for a shed only or for just a building period?
Any building.
I'd rather have it just for a shed only. But
You wish to offer that as an amendment?
I do.
I thought there was a condition that it said that the variance is for a 5-foot setback for a structure in the northeast corner of the lot.
Okay.
That's what I thought was
I would
also
amend
part
that.
of it.
I would amend that motion to authorize the 5-foot side and front setback for the current shed.
And the shed only.
The shed only. Then if he wants to do a garage, then come in later on and we'll discuss that and try to make a determination with that.
Is there a second to that amendment?
Yes, I agree with the second on that. But with that language, is there a 5-foot setback then on the entire south and the entire east? But I know it's the northeast corner, but what does that include? I mean,
well, it would be my intent that it would be for the dimensions of that shed.
Shed only.
So you'd come down the east side, whatever the dimensions of that shed is, and you go up to the north, or I've got my north side, whatever the dimensions of the shed is. And it only covers those areas.
You could even make it specific just for this shed that's currently located on the property.
That's what he said, yep.
Yeah, I thought that's what you meant.
That's what he said.
As long as it's in there.
That's my intent, in a way.
All right, right.
Okay?
Be okay, Karen? Okay, we have an amendment. All in favor of the motion to amend, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carried. Now, we have an amended motion. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Need to come out of a Board of Adjustments.
Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning the Board of Adjustments, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Committee reports.
I don't have anything today, Mr. Chair.
I just have one thing, Mr. Chairman. I had a meeting with with Bob from our association and another gentleman whose name I seem to have had but lost, on the governor's criminal justice initiative that you've maybe read about in the paper. And I have some information there that I will have Holly pass out to you, and I also have a copy of the bill that is going in. It's kind of a comprehensive, we're going to try to keep people out of prison. And of course, my concerns were, in the last times, it's been, we're going to keep them out of prison and put them in the county jail. Well, this is not what they're striving to do. It's more drug courts, et cetera, to do some alternative sentencing. It's amazing that, and the figures are in here, but something like 60% of the people in prison are there for drugs or alcohol, and 60% of those people, 70% of those people are users, not sellers, dealers. So it's actually quite crazy. So we're going to work, I think he's going to try to work on that. I'll give you this information, and there's a lot of facts and figures in there, and you'll have the bill, and it's kind of a omnibus bill. It's a lot in it, but it'll, I'm sure, have some fair hearings in Pier, and right at the moment, unless they hear a lot of opposition, the association's going to be in favor of it, trying to save the counties some money.
The only thing I can say to that is I remembered Janklo's maneuvers very well when he closed a couple of prisons and that's why we built a new jail. There's some of the reason for it.
Janklo built prisons, he didn't close them.
Well,
do you have any committee reports?
No, I don't.
Nancy?
I went to Pier this week and testified before the House Ag Committee and the Joint Appropriations Committee in regard to House Bill 1050. And that is the governor's bill. And if you remember right, in his State of the State address, he proposed $2 million in additional mountain pine beetle funding, and that funding would come directly to counties. And it looks very promising. We'll be going back to talk to the Senate Ag Committee, I believe, on Thursday morning, but it's a part of the mix of what we were talking about earlier. And the Mountain Pine Beetle Committee for Pennington County had met, and we have some plans of how we can use that. The main focus is, as Scott said earlier, keeping roadways open and keeping areas safe as much as possible, because we already have such a high rate of kill on the part of the trees. So I'll just keep you kind of informed on that. I'm real hopeful for it, and it sounded promising. So,
Mr. Chairman, I have one thing to add to that. And I don't know if Nancy got any grief when she was there, but sounds like I talked to Jay a little bit about it. If you go to Pier and any of us, and go testify, you don't need to be a registered lobbyist. Elected officials have a right to go to Pier and testify before any committee on any county matter that they're interested in without being a registered lobbyist. And I think some of the legislators don't know that rule. So you might want to, if you go, maybe Holly might have to make up some. I told Jay, let's just take a copy of the state law and take it along with us and say, here, read this, and then we'll continue.
Maybe we could just send a memo to each legislator.
Maybe it might not hurt, because some of them don't get it.
Do we, Mr. Chair, and maybe Holly knows, do we have on our computer system all of the legislators like we had before, that we can send a boom email to and say, hey, don't do this anymore?
Was it one of our...
I don't know if it was necessarily legislators. Wasn't that the Secretary of State's office?
No, we had at one time, way back, I mean, when I was on the last time, that we had a computer program set up that we could send every legislator an email.
So it was the Secretary of State that was...
Yeah, okay, well, but it needs to get to those legislators so they're not picking and choosing their fights. And I had that happen to me before, and like I say, I'm pretty sure someplace around here is an Attorney General's opinion.
I don't particularly have a committee report, but I would share with the board that the extension of South Valley Drive, which has been completed, has brought comments to me about some of the hazards and the signage. And in pursuing that with Heine, the declaration was that the city says it's in no man's land, and the county says it's in no man's land, and somebody built the road. It was agreed to, and so on. So in exploring that with a representative of the city department and with Heine, they're working on a mutual solution. But it strikes me that possibly in planning and zoning or some other way, we say whenever a street or public thoroughfare is allowed, that the forces involved need to give every consideration to the safety aspects, the signage and so on, and have an understanding before they ever build it, so that citizens don't end up chasing around trying to find answers as to who has authority and or responsibility. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was, and I totally get what everybody's saying, because I use that almost daily, but, you know, there was a deal where there was some funding given to the developer, and the developer didn't do it, and I, you know, that they should have made that person or those persons liable from the beginning, but they didn't. It wasn't enforced, and that's, I think it should be something we look at, because how do you make them do what they're supposed to do?
Yeah. Well, Heine indicated that they're collaborating with the city, and that the solution will be arrived at. But if we can lay the base for guiding the forces that be into doing it on the front end instead of the back end, I
Yeah,
think it'd
be much.
progress.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything further?
Mr. Chair, do we need any kind of a motion or something to allow Holly to send that email to the legislators and remind them of that South Dakota code on elected officials?
I don't think so.
I could, and as long as I've got it with me this next time, that'll make it, yeah.
Okay.
Items from the public.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion to go into executive session for personnel and contractual.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.